Hello, BookTube. This is finally an update on the Future History Project, and I finished Robots and Empire by Isaac Asimov. It was published in 1985. It's one of the books that sort of connects the robot stories to the Empire, and then that's what he was doing, connecting the Empire and so forth to the Foundation novels and stories. I do apologize. My breathing is a little up and down at the moment. This, for the most part, takes place on Aurora, centering around Daniel and Gisgard. It is approximately 190 centuries past, or 190 years, sorry, 190 years past the time of Robots of Dawn. Humans have now settled many worlds, the first of it which was Bailey World. Daniel and Gisgard are now owned by Gladia because Fastolf had died, and Gisgard made sure that that would happen. And at the behest of Elijah, they protect Gladia and also sort of stand guard for something they know is coming that will be a turning point in humanity. And they feel it's something to do with the spacers trying to stop Earth from settling, or with the settlers. At the same time, Solaria has been abandoned by humans and left to overseer robots who basically are programmed that anybody who is not Solarian is therefore enemy and not human and should be destroyed. So two settler ships had landed thinking they could grab a whole bunch of robots and sell them to the spacer worlds. The ships were destroyed shortly after they landed. So another trader vessel, piloted by with the captain 7 generations removed from Elijah, a descendant named Daniel Gisgard Bailey, comes to Aurora to ask Gladia to accompany him to Solaria because she was Solarian born. She agrees with a little prompting from Gisgard and pressure from the Auroran government because she was just previously met by one of her descendants, a scientist, a roboticist, who is working with sort of the old enemy. And there's a lot of politics going on, but basically they don't want Earth to continue and spread throughout the galaxy because they figure they're barbarians and a disease, as most spacers do. So Danielle and Gisgard accompany Gladia to Solaria, and as I say, the robots only see her as human because she uses her Solarian accent, and she tries to kill the captain Bailey and Danielle because he's not human. But Gisgard saves the day and freezes the robot overseer. So they come away with a bit of a prize, a weapon that is something that they've been trying to perfect for quite a while. It's an intensifier that will intensify a fusion reaction very quickly, very hotly, and blow anything up, basically, that is fusion. So they return they go to Bailey World, where Gladia is hailed as a hero because the story is that she saved the captain, and she becomes basically a peace envoy for spacers and settlers to live peacefully. She goes back to Aurora, and other things are afoot there. Falstaff's daughter, Falstaff had died like a few years before the opening of the story, and Gisgard and Daniel were willed to Gladia. But she realizes, because she was on Solaria before the Solarians left, that they were trying to get a telepathic robot, and she saw the patterns, and it was a pattern that she put into Gisgard when she was a teenager. So she realizes that he has telepathic patterns, and she convinces a few others, or one other, to sort of get him back. She's wanted him back anyway. The plan doesn't work. Gisgard wipes her mind. They escape to Earth with Gladia and Captain Bailey to continue her peace, being a peace envoy between spacers and settlers in Earth. Meanwhile, there's a plan afoot to destroy Earth and to use an intensifier to intensify fission reaction, a normal sort of radioactive decay of uranium or thorium. And they're at 3 Mile Island doing this. So Daniel and Gisgard know there's something afoot. And they go, and, well, they don't actually stop them. Gisgard allows the slow reaction to happen over 160 years or so, and that will force humans to actually leave Earth and populate the galaxy. But Gisgard, meanwhile, has been fighting with using the Zeroth law, but fails because he wipes the minds of 2 humans and he ceases to exist. But at the same time, he passes this ability on to Daniel, and also tells him to find out where the Solarians win. It could be important. So that basically is the storyline. However, there are some flashbacks because, as I say, it's about 190 years after the Robots of Dawn. Now, a lot of things had happened in that time. There's a few flashbacks of Gladia meeting Elijah Bailey on his way to Bailey World. He did finally become a settler and going to the world where his son is in charge. But his wife would not become a settler, so she remained on Earth. Gladia spends a few hours in intimate relations with Elijah, and there is a slight question of whether or not she fathered a child by him, or he fathered a child by her. I guess that would be it. Because a descendant of hers had come to see her and questioned this, but she says she was already pregnant, but there is a bit of a question. But the Captain Bailey that comes from Bailey World is a 7th generation descendant of Elijah, and his name is Daniel Gisgard, 2 names. That are prominent in the Bailey family lineage. And there's a few other reminiscences as well. Gisgard went to Earth with Falstaff, who was trying to broker this peace and treaty between Earth and the Spacers, so Earth could settle and allow them to settle. And Gisgard sort of prompted and tweaked Falstaff to take him along, so he could actually help and make sure this would happen. And he actually he changed a few robots as well to carry on after he left. And this was a time where there were still some robots in cities on Earth. Later, they banned pretty well all robots from the cities, and they're just out in the countryside. That'll come up in another minute or two. Um, and he obviously met Elijah, and Elijah told him about that. He figures there's something coming, to keep an eye out on things, and that's what sort of Daniel and Gisgard have been doing, and trying to sort of formulate either a law of humanics or the zeroth law. And they figure that there is something that's coming, and they see it in the sense of the spacers going to try to stop the settlers. And so they uncover this plot of the intensifier and making the earth radioactive. But also, Daniel has sort of formulated a zeroth law, but it's taken him centuries to do it, like finally. But it still is problematic. He last saw Elijah on Bailey World when Elijah was dying, and he relates to what Elijah said to him on his deathbed, which was, the work of each individual contributes to a totality and so becomes an underlying part in the totality. That totality of human lives, past and present and to come, forms a tapestry that has been in existence now for many tens of thousands of years, and has been grown more elaborate and on the whole more beautiful in all that time. Even the spacers are an offshoot of the tapestry, and they too add to the elaborateness and beauty of the pattern. An individual life is one thread in the tapestry, and what is one thread compared to the whole? Daniel, keep your mind fixed firmly on the tapestry, and do not let the trailing off of a single thread affect you. So Daniel has formulated this, that sometimes human life, as an individual human life, may need to be sacrificed for the good of the whole. But he's telling this to Vasilia when she's trying to talk Gisgard back into her control before Gisgard wipes her mind. And she's saying, well, that's ridiculous. She's surprised that Daniel hasn't froze up because of this. He is having some difficulties, but he has sort of worked his way through it. But she points out that what is humanity? It's an abstract, and you can't point to it and see it. And she says, but you can to a human, so therefore it won't work. But Daniel figures that that he can point to humanity of what's happening in the galaxy and the spread of the settlers and everything. That is humanity, so that is important. So that sort of wins out. He still is unsure of it, but Gisgard has doubts, and he's not sure. So that's why he ceases to operate after he affects and damages two humans' minds at 3 Mile Island, where the intensifier was happening on Earth to make it radioactive. But he allows it to happen because he figures that because humans, the settlers, treat Earth as a sacred object almost, they need to stop that. And by having the Earth slowly over 160 years or so get radioactive, they will then eventually leave the Earth and settle the galaxy. But he's still not sure, so he ceases to exist. But at the same time, he passes on his powers to Daniel. There's a lot of interesting things with that because it's a little tenuous at times, because they like Daniel sort of formulates what's going on and makes guesses, and he happens to be right. Not every time, but he does make a guess here or there. But clearly, you could clearly see that is wrong because he points out things. But this other ones are always right. So it's a little tenuous, but okay, fine. I go along with it, with the story, and with Gisgard doing the same thing of feeling that there's something happening, and it turns out that there is something happening that was a turning point. Interesting thing with the other previous trilogy that was before this, and the Robots City novels. There was the talk of Zeroth Law there as well, but not in the same way or the same reason as Asimov had done here. This was written before. And also, too, there was when Ariel and Derek were on Earth in the last trilogy, robots were on Earth. So that's prior to the banishment. And there was also talks about a conference. So, but I don't believe it's the conference that's mentioned in here. It may have been a previous one or it's a subsequent one. The timeline is not that clear. Also, too, the radiation of having the Earth radiated, so they leave, is sort of Asimov filling in a gap, which we will see in the Empire novels, and a sort of where science sort of took over, went faster than and changed for some beliefs. So he's trying to backtrack a little bit by doing this. But also, too, he sets up very nicely, I think, this how the Zeroth Law sort of started, which then continues on throughout with Dan Neal, throughout the other stories, either implicitly or in the background. So it's a very good novel. As I say, it's a bit long at times. And an interesting thing was that Asimov said that he took flack for killing off Elijah, but not as much flack as killing off Gisgard at the end of this, at the end of the novel. So Daniel goes on, and the next Asimov novels are the Robot Empire novels. However, there is a trilogy between them. And it's the by Roger McBride Allen, and the first one is Caliban, and that was published in 1993. And then we got Inferno, which was published 1994. And then we end up with Utopia, published, I assume, 1996. I've not read these. This trilogy has been heralded as excellent, so fingers crossed compared to the previous ones. And I'm not sure what period it is, so we'll get to that once we do. But I do like the way that Asimov, even in retrospect, in trying to fill the gaps and the holes with Robots and Empire, he does it kind of interesting because it sets Daniel up to be a guardian of humanity. So he's basically there in everything that comes after, and either in front or disguised, or in the background, because Asimov wrote stories before he thought of that. So, but they're sort of implicit. He's implicitly there. But anyway, if you've been following along and you've got this far, I'd love to hear what you think of Robots and Empire and how it fits in. I thought it was really good. As I say, the way the mystery sort of is, or the things that they're trying to find out, is a little iffy story-wise, but fine. It works because it fits in for the puzzle, but it's a little questionable. I think he might have been able to spend a little more time on the plot and the evidence for things that that for Gisgard and Daniel to actually point to and say this is what's happening, to have events that they were aware of that led up to it, and these are the way they do it is just making guesses. It's kind of the old pulp science fiction thing where a lot of that happens, where people make guesses and they're right, with no foundation of a fact, but they're usually right. And then when they're wrong, it's clearly that there's no way that that could be right, because they've already shown something that would happen that knocks it out as being right. But but the guesses, they don't. So it is something that is part of the genre, and it's it's a little irksome to see it, especially in somebody's caliber like Asimov, especially in 1985, where I'm sure he could have, spent a little more time on the plot and done something a little more intricate, and it would have fit in a little better. But there are still lots of little things that are foreshadowing for, as I say, future stories. So we will get to them. Thank you, Book 2.